Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to be reacting to 10 weapons that are needlessly dark in Warhammer 40k. This was a suggestion by Megos, my really great friend. I would say good, but he's really awesome. He put this in the Discord link. If you want to have me react to anything, you can go to the Discord, join up if you haven't already. And then from there, we have a little section, video suggestions, if you want me to check something out. Otherwise, let's get into the video.
So Warhammer 40k is famous for a lot of things.
Hold on. I want to just say, Weshammer, you're a handsome dude. And I appreciate your videos and I love your content. Thank you for being awesome.
But one of its biggest claims to fame is being unapologetically bombastic and over the top. This is a science fiction franchise where you have roided up space dudes in power armor charging into the enemy with a whole bunch of chainsaw swords.
So what is it? I just want to ask a question to the audience. What is it about Warhammer that you love so much? It is needlessly dark, crazy, bloody, gory, horrifying. I know, I kind of like, a friend asked me once, why do you like this so much? Do you want to live in this universe? And I said, hell no, I don't want to live in this universe. For some reason, I am drawn to it because it's so dark. What is your reasoning? I want to know. Why do you enjoy this stuff? Let me know in the comments. Why do you enjoy Warhammer the way you do? Let's keep going. Weshammer, handsome guy.
For no better reason other than it's super badass. But believe it or not, there are weapons out there that make charging into the enemy, waving chainsaws around, screaming praise to the God Emperor look, honestly, pretty timid by comparison. Some could say they're needlessly dark. From living weapons that fire voracious brain-eating worms, to laboratory instruments that cause your flesh to grow out of control until you explode in a giant gore shower. These weapons are pretty dark, but kind of hilariously edgy and awesome in their own right. So let's take a look at 10 of the most needlessly dark weapons in the entire 40k universe. But first I'm gonna give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, and then we'll dive headfirst into the grimdark. Stay tuned.
Off this list at number 10, we have the Adeptus mechanicus torsion cannons. So the torsion cannon is a gun used by the Adeptus mechanicus, and it's normally mounted on their battle servitors.
Wait, torsion. When I think so, okay. So when I think of torsion, I think about testicular torsion. I'm sorry guys that I'm bringing this up right now, but for all the guys out there, that's when your balls like twist, right? They go from being like here to like flipping around, and then they die. Because there's no blood circulation. So I can only imagine torsion is a twist. I don't know if I'm wrong. We'll find out if I'm right or wrong, but that's what I think of immediately when I hear the word torsion. So maybe, hopefully I'm wrong. It's gotta get it out of the head.
On one hand,
now.
this thing is actually pretty cool and creative for a science fiction weapon. But on the other hand, it is unnecessarily brutal. When fired, the torsion cannon energizes itself and fires 3 sequential energy beams, which lock onto their target and hold it in place. The barrel of the cannon then begins to rotate, and the matter fields that were generated by the gun...
I was right. No. Why did I have to be right? Why did I have to be right? It turns your whole... Okay.
Begin to relentlessly twist in opposite directions, the torsion created by it literally ripping the target apart. And no matter...
I don't know, you can't see the rest of me, but I'm very uncomfortable right now. The thought of what we were talking about a minute ago.
What it's fired at, whether it be a Tyranid hive tyrant, a heretic's rhino, or even a human being, chunks of it are sent flying in every direction. And being ripped apart by energy beams is a pretty terrible way to go. And I may have never personally worked in a machine shop, but I've been told that lathes are one of the most dangerous things that you can work with. And getting your hand stuck in one of these things is a pretty common workplace accident. So imagine 3 of them being smushed together and then made into a ranged weapon. It's pretty awful stuff. Landing at number 9 is the Harlequin's Kiss. So we know the Harlequin's Kiss doesn't look that intimidating at first glance, But looks can be deceiving, and I promise you this is one of the most terrifying weapons in the entire galaxy. You see, it consists of a long sharpened tube that is connected to a housing unit, and inside of that chamber is a 100-meter long monofilament wire, meaning that it is a single molecule in diameter. It is inconceivably sharp, and surprisingly, insanely durable. When activated by the bearer punching the weapon forward, the wire is released through the tube and forcefully injected inside the victim's body. All 100 meters will then violently thrash around inside of the target, liquefying them from the inside out. By retracting their arm, the wire then quickly coils back inside of the device, ready to be deployed once again. Mercifully, death by this thing is pretty quick, and it does leave the user vulnerable for a few seconds. I would say that the only saving grace here is that this thing is primarily a melee device, and can't really be used at range. Unfortunately, this isn't the only use of monofilament technology employed by the Eldar.
Sounds
In
horrifying.
at number 8 is the Eldari Doomweaver. So if you thought the Harlequin's kiss was bad, the Doomweaver is way worse. So the Doomweaver is an anti-infantry weapon normally mounted on top of an Eldar grav tank known as a Night Spinner. It uses the same monofilament technology, but on a much grander scale. You see, the weapon works by launching so much of this filament into the air that it appears like it is releasing a massive black cloud. And I know what you're thinking. There's nothing scary about a cloud cannon. But you listen to me when I tell you that this isn't any ordinary cloud.
No.
You see, what gives it its distinctive black color is actually thousands of miles of this monofilament fiber, spread out like a massive floating net. As this massive web of razor wire floats down to the battlefield, any infantry that get caught in it are absolutely eviscerated. And the worst part is the cloud actually sticks around on the ground for a while, making it impossible for troops to move through without getting dissected.
Think about that for a second. You're just a guardsman, just hanging around, waiting for orders. See black cloud comes down, and then all of a sudden you were cut to shreds. Because it's just little razor wire, essentially. Ugh, that sounds horrible. Horrible and horrifying. I would never, ever, ever, ever want that to happen. The torsion cannon already, and then this thing, this filament weapon. Or the Harlequin's quit. I can't even talk. The Harlequin kiss. I don't want either of any of this. This is all horrible. They are needlessly dark so far for no reason.
Thankfully, the fiber can't stay suspended in the air indefinitely, and eventually will sink to the ground and be safe to move over. But the fact that this cannon can do what the Harlequin's kiss does on a massive scale is truly horrifying. In 7th place, we have the Tyranid devourers. So I'm gonna be honest with you. This list could realistically be made up exclusively of Tyranid weapons. They're all absolutely insane and needlessly dark.
Yeah, they're all living like creatures. Every one of those things is a creature that's essentially a parasite on the main Tyranid that it's inhabiting next to being on. Ugh. And then it shoots smaller Tyranids that are horrifying. Like, everything is just so gnarly.
And it's not really fair to call them weapons, as they're actually living creatures, and an extension of the Tyranid organism that wields it. But of all the crazy nightmare fuel that the Tyranids bring to war, I think the humble Devourer definitely takes the cake for me as something you absolutely don't want to fight against. You see, the Devourer is a type of gun that is filled with parasitic worms. These worms live and breed inside of the weapon. You can think of it more like a beehive and less like a gun. But I'm gonna call it a gun to make things simple. When the Tyranid wielding it is ready to fire, they will release an electrical shock generated from deep inside of their body that travels through the barrel of the gun. This awakens the worms from their dormant state and whips them up into a killing frenzy. The worms will then be ejected out of the barrel at ludicrously high speeds, and when they make contact with the target, they'll immediately begin to burrow inside of them insanely quickly, chewing through flesh and bone.
That's awful.
These worms move insanely fast and have evolved to wreak havoc on the victim's neurosystem. They will attempt to target and burrow towards the brain as quickly as possible. Once they reach the brain, they will begin to devour it, eating the victim alive, and rendering them completely helpless against the oncoming Tyranid swarm. And armored targets don't really fare much better against this thing, as if the worms collide with something hard enough to rupture them, they'll explode into a splash of acid. And this acid is corrosive enough to eat through that armor, creating an opening for the...
So not even armor can save you from this horrible thing, because you get hit with one It just splashes, gets eaten away, then you get hit with another in the same spot, and then it eats you from the inside out. It's great.
Surviving worms to burrow inside. There exist a lot of different variations of this weapon, and some of them are small enough to be wielded by the basic troops known as gaunts, meaning that you could have thousands of these things being fired at you at once. But there are also variants that are wielded by much larger Tyranid creatures, and the worms inside of those are even scarier. Coming in at number 6 is the shock attack gun. So we need to talk about one of the craziest and most horrifying inventions the orcs have ever made.
Again, you already know, but the orcs, I love these guys. They're my favorite. They're my jam. I just love them so much. The gits, the boys, the knobs, all of them. I swear I think they're one of my, if not. Okay, so I really like the Space Marines. They're like second. They are like second in my tier list of the Warhammer 40k armies.
It's called the shock attack gun. And on one hand, it's the silliest weapon in the galaxy, but it's also incredibly effective, if not kinda unpredictable. You see, the shock attack gun works by generating a sequence of 2 portals. The first appears right in front of the bearer, while the other materializes wherever the individual has aimed the cannon. Using a vacuum system, the wielder sucks up a bunch of tiny orc-like creatures known as snotlings, which are basically smaller versions of the Gretchen. They will then be fired through the gun and shot through the first portal. And you see, that portal leads directly into the warp. Basically hell if you're new to 40k.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So the snotlings are then sent through a journey through hell with no protection. And the experience is said to be so horrifying that the snotlings go absolutely batshit insane. Their tiny minds being completely incapable of processing the sheer overwhelming terror of the warp. When they exit through the second portal, they go into a berserker's frenzy, clawing, beating, and stabbing wildly at anything in the vicinity. And having the enemy fire hundreds of insane goblins at you is scary enough, but that second portal is pretty unpredictable, and it can appear anywhere the orc aimed it. And the orcs don't have the best accuracy. Sometimes the portal will materialize inside of a rock, which kills all of the goblins instantly when they come out. Sometimes the portal will materialize way up in the air and it will just rain snotlings down on you. Sometimes the snotlings don't survive their journey through the warp, and the only thing that comes out of the second portal is just a tidal wave of blood and guts. But sometimes the portal can materialize inside of a person, causing a whole bunch of frenzied goblins to burst out of your chest like that scene from the movie Alien. And knowing that you're about to be killed by a bunch of insane snotlings is pretty scary in its own right, but seeing them burst out of your comrade's chest has got to be at the very least a little demoralizing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Claiming the number 5 spot is the disease known as the walking pox.
Walkers.
So the walking pox is actually a disease and not necessarily a weapon, but it is utilized by the Legion of Space Marines known as the Death Guard, who are masters of biochemical and disease-based warfare. And the Death Guard have hundreds of different insanely destructive and demonic diseases under their control. And needless to say, they make for some pretty potent weapon. The one known as the walking pox may seem simple enough. Once infected, the victim will begin to rot and decay, and they'll quickly turn into what is known as a poxwalker. You can think of them like plague zombies. Now, what makes this particularly scary is that the walking pox doesn't just kill its victims, it takes over their bodies. And even worse, it leaves their mind completely intact. So it's basically like locked-in syndrome, where the victim is forced to watch themselves turn on their allies. They must bear witness to all of the terrible and horrible things the Death Guard makes them do. And having locked-in syndrome is scary enough, but then being forced to murder everyone you've ever loved by a bunch of crazy diseased space marines?
That's horrifying. Imagine that. Your body is not yours anymore. It's a rotting carcass, essentially, that's full of disease, and you can't stop your body from attacking your friends. Ugh. Oh, man. That's horrible. That's a horrible. Oh, everything is really... All these are really bad. This is especially bad. Okay, I don't know. Between this or the snotling gun, they're both, all of it's bad. All of it's bad. I keep thinking like, okay, well, the weird boy or whoever has that gun shoots it and then it just rains snotlings. It's crazy. But then this one, you are the weapon and you're a walking disease.
I think easily makes the list for needlessly dark.
Yeah.
The walking pox is also insanely contagious, as it's not just a disease of the body, but of the soul. and it can spread from direct contact with an afflicted individual, but the more peculiar way that it spreads is through sound. Just hearing the grotesque groans and moans of the poxwalkers is enough for the virus to enter your body. Kind of similar to how diseases like malaria can be transmitted by a mosquito, the walking pox hijacks the emotion of dread and uses it like a disease vector. And once that feeling of inescapable certainty of your own death enters your heart, so too does the walking pox.
Ooh.
Meaning that once unleashed, outbreaks will quickly spread through an enemy's defenses, leading to an inevitable victory for the Death Guard. In at number 4, we have the Ossefactor. Just like with the Tyranids, this entire list could be comprised solely of Dark Eldar tech, as they're a species that is known for being particularly cruel.
Yeah, because of the whole, we wanted to, well, I guess they didn't want to, but that happened anyway. Birth Slanesh, the god of excess, because they like their creepy parties. I was going to say ditty parties. Well, it could be that. They like their ditty parties. That's Games Workshop. You should do something with that. Maybe you could call them puffy parties or something. I don't know where I'm going with this. That's horrible. But the Dark Eldar, they're horrifying, they're horrible. It's just, yeah. Their weapons obviously are probably going to be that as well.
But in the interest of being fair, I've selected a couple that I think are particularly dark. And I actually found a pair that kind of go hand in hand. The first is known as the Ossefactor. And just like with the walking pox, it's not actually a weapon. It's a tool used by the Drukhari flesh crafters known as the homunculi. It's traditionally used to accelerate the bone growth of their flesh puppets and monstrous constructs, such as the racks, grotesques, and even the massive floating pain engines, to name a few.
These are the guys that create new Eldar, if I'm not mistaken. Like they're either bribed or paid or something by the normal, not Dark Eldar, to help increase their population. I remember that from a video that we did a while back. It's very interesting. And they're also like really into body modifications and stuff. So, yeah.
However, particularly cruel homunculi have used it on the battlefield. In combat, the ostitic waves that this thing generates are cranked up to 11, and the victim is given a massive overdose of the skeletal twisting energy. This causes their bone system to buckle and violently grow out of control, their spine jutting and ripping through their skin, their ribcage elongating and bursting through their chest, and their skulls growing so rapidly that their face rips and literally falls off. Sometimes death comes mercifully quick, but other times,
sound like it.
The bone growth doesn't end up puncturing any of the vital organs. So with their organ system intact, the victim is forced to stay alive for several grueling minutes before all of their bones grow out of control and burst from their body. Unfortunately, there's really no telling how an individual will react to this thing. And much to the twisted delight of the homunculi, every opportunity that the Ossefactor is used is an incredibly rewarding research opportunity. The homunculi are scientists of pain first and foremost, and are not necessarily soldiers, normally letting their constructs do the fighting for them. However, when they do take to the field, whether they actually want to go to war or they're looking at it as an opportunity for research, their presence is truly horrifying. Coming in at number 3 is the flesh gauntlets. Now, another one of their tools is known as the flesh gauntlet. And this takes the appearance of a handheld claw weapon, each finger ending in a long needle-like syringe. These syringes can inject any manner of vile concoction that the wielder has equipped them with a single strike. Most commonly, they're filled with an electrosteroid that forces rapid and unnatural growth of flesh and organ, making the target literally outgrow their own skin.
That's very similar to the bone thing, where they make the bones go crazy. Why is this a thing? Why is this a thing in the Dark Eldar? It really shouldn't be a thing. I mean, getting injected with stuff, having filaments ripped through you, filament clouds, all sorts of crazy stuff. This, of course, you're going to have needle fingers that puncture you and fill you with the horrifying concoctions. That only makes sense, right?
As their insides swell to ludicrous proportion and the target explodes in a gory and horrific spectacle. Much like with the Ossefactor, when this is used as a weapon, the victim is given a dose of this stuff 100 times greater than they would normally get in the homunculi's experiments. Now, both of these things aren't exclusively used by the homunculi. They're often equipped on their creations as well. But I can only imagine what kind of horrible edgelord homunculus would attempt to equip both the Flesh Gauntlet and the Ossefactor at the same time. In at number 2, we have the Hellblades. A Hellblade is a sword wielded by the lesser demons of Khorne, which are known as bloodletters. And the weapons match their wielder's name quite well, as no mortal-made armor can protect from their incredibly sharp cutting edge. Now, these weapons are said to have been sharpened by hatred itself, and what makes them so scary is that once struck, the target will immediately begin to bleed out, as the demons that are bound within the Hellblades disable the blood's ability to clot, meaning that even just a shallow cut will produce a torrent of blood to flow from the victim like a waterfall.
Blood for the blood god, skull for the skull's throne. Makes sense.
And the blades don't just cut the victim's flesh, they actually rend apart their soul. It's said that these weapons can't be wielded by mortals, but there have been a few examples of it happening. And every time it does, the wielder begins to go more and more insane, as the blade's corrupting influence causes them to crave more and more bloodshed, eventually turning them into a mindless killing machine. And I guess it makes sense for soldiers of the blood god to use weapons that make you just bleed out forever, as Khorne cares not from where the blood flows, only that it flows. And at the number 1 spot, we have the Sun Snuffers. So you may be aware that there was a period in mankind's history known as the Dark Age of Technology. Now, this was a time period that lasted from the 15th to the 25th millennia and ended with the coming of the Age of Strife, where massive warp storms materialized and basically cut off all of the human worlds from being able to interact with one another. But during the Dark Age of Technology, humanity created amazing and horrifying machines. This was the peak of mankind's technological achievements, and one of their creations was known simply as Sun Snuffers. They were these massive coiled mechanical monstrosities of impossible size, said to be so large that they dwarfed even the rings of Saturn. Now, these mechanical abominations were used to literally strangle and snuff out stars, like wetting your fingers and pinching a lit candle wick, but on a much larger scale. Now, information on this time period is incredibly rare, and we don't necessarily know how these things were used or when mankind would see them as even necessary. But it is said that during the machine uprising in the 23rd millennium, known as the Cybernetic Revolt, that many of mankind's terrible creations—
I'm getting a very Matrix vibe. So, in case you don't know, maybe you're too young, maybe you're not into the Matrix movies or whatever, when AI took over just the Earth and put humans in the little pods, well, before that, the humans snuffed out the sun in order to stop the, because most of the robots, androids, whatever, AI, they were run off of solar power. So the idea was, let's completely wipe out the sun. You can't see it. It would actually not be, destroying the sun, but they created like a nuclear winter, essentially, to stop them. This is very reminiscent of the Matrix. Don't know which one came first, but pretty much the same thing. It's a sci-fi trope, I guess, huh?
Were turned against them, meaning it's very possible that the suns of many human civilizations were snuffed out by the men of iron, killing untold billions. And whether or not any of these things are still out there intact, we don't really know. But hopefully we will never see one of these things be used again.
All right, so that was 10 needlessly dark weapons in Warhammer 40k by Weshammer. He always does just a fantastic job. We've reacted to a number of his videos here. I really like his videos. Some of them are really long, but I still enjoy them. But he's also very, very knowledgeable in this whole thing and combining all these things. I love it. Thanks again to Magos for suggesting this. If you want me to react to something, go to the Discord. The link will be in the description. The video ideas suggestion box or something. I forget what it's actually. It's a tab. It's a tab that says video suggestions. Go down there, type in what you want me to see, drop a link, whatever, and we'll react to it. Anyway, make sure you check out Weshammer if you haven't already. Like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. Make sure you do that for that video too. I appreciate you, and I'll catch you in the next one.